Hey, a pleasant good day, everybody. Welcome to the next edition of the JB and Steel Show. As I am Sports Fanatic News, that is SteelFlyers. I believe this is episode 18, isn't it, Steel?
You got it. 18.
How you doing,
Good
buddy?
memory. Good memory.
Yeah, how you doing, buddy? How's your day going?
Oh man, I'll tell you what. It's a little bit rainy and a little bit overcast, and a little bit yucky where I'm at, but that's just the weather. But I'll tell you what, man. We got NBA playoffs. We got NHL playoffs getting ready to start. We got the NFL draft is coming up this weekend. We got Major League Baseball is in full swing now. I mean, Formula One is in full swing. I mean, this is like almost the next best time to be a sports fan next to being in the fall. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And, you got the NBA playoffs. You got the Stanley Cup playoffs starting soon. The Kelly Cup playoffs and the ECHL have already started. The Calder Cup playoffs and the AHL are soon to start. The Phantoms won't be in it, but it'll still be a fun playoffs to pay attention to a lot.
Right.
So same with the Stanley Cup playoffs in relevance to the Flyers. But also, to everybody, we did our first episode of another fun podcast, All Genre Music Fest, with the great Peerless Wisdom of SteelFlyers yesterday. So if you're huge music fanatics of any genre, we're going to be talking about on there and want to have as many guests as possible, as well as on here if you can talk cordially about sports or cordially about music. We would love to have you on as well. So just wanted to put that one out there before we jump into basketball.
That was fun.
And yeah, that was a very fun first episode. As now we're jumping to the hottest topic in the land, as our great friend Pirlo likes to say, which is the NBA and basketball right now. As basically right now, we'll start with my team so I can get this off my chest. There's been no team in NBA history that has blown none. There's been some in other sports, like the Flyers made the Bruins blow a 3-0 lead. There's been no teams in NBA history that have blown a 3-0 series lead. Well, right now it seems like the Sixers are saying, "Hold my beer." We like it. So they need to, and Joel Embiid gets no blame in this because he's playing through a busted thumb, and I think has still been giving his all, and just he's expected to digress some because he's playing through a busted thumb on a shooting game. So obviously he's not going to be the full-blown Joel Embiid. The big issue I have is what Joel said about Harden. Harden has not been aggressive at all. James Harden's been overpassive, making lackadaisical passes like the other way yesterday, and has not been aggressive at all. And then Toby, to me, was great in the first two games. Mark Farzetta, who I really like in local area media, I like calling into his morning show when he still worked for 97.5. Now I watch him on YouTube. I like how he is because he's so blunt and just says it how he thinks it is. That they need Toby to be as aggressive as he is in the start of games throughout the game, because I understand when you watch the Sixers, you don't look at the sheet and paper and go, "Oh, well, Tobias Harris should be the leading scorer by the end of the night." No kidding, because they have James Harden and Joel Embiid on their team, and Tyrese Maxey might even be above him in some people's life when it comes to guys that give you the bigger point output. But the thing is, he's been our most consistent shooter in this series. Just because you ain't him compared to Embiid and Harden doesn't mean you can't shoot more in individual games, because you're the guy that is it that game and is making it more. I think he should be more aggressive. But also Tobias Harris hasn't ever had kind of the alpha dog characteristic ever, where James Harden has.
Yeah, but you still need to be able to recognize when you need to step up.
Oh, you do, but the thing is, it's also knowing the play. Like, I don't expect Harris to be able to fully click in alpha dog because he never was that, except for, you could argue, but he still wasn't it really in LA. He was just the top scorer because he had to be with the Clippers during his run there.
Right.
Like, if he can get more aggressive, that's what you need. Where Harden has been an alpha dog through most of his career, and then just you haven't seen that enough here because he knows he has the talent around him, that he's trying to turn too much into Oscar freaking Robertson when he's supposed to be a guy that's a great shooter and also can pass, not just one of the best triple-double passers of all time.
So instead of it waiting for him, they wanted to run through him.
Yeah, exactly. And Embiid even called on himself. He said he needs to be more aggressive. And when you have that coming from the guy that, in my opinion, should be the MVP of the league this year, congratulations to John Moran on winning Most Improved Player, by the way. He needs to step up to that fold, and I expect Harden to play his best game because that's what I expect out of James Harden being a veteran. So I will say I expect him to play his best game the next game to try to end it in Toronto, and I expect Joel to even get more of his whatever he's able to do with that thumb because Joel, in moments he knows, even when he's been banged up before, he's done it through his back. He's still scored 30-something points through a dreadful back. And I would say a dreadful back affects your overall play a lot more than a thumb because a thumb you don't necessarily shoot that much with your thumb. You use your other fingers to follow through.
Yeah, but your back is for everything.
Yeah, your back's for everything.
Okay.
So I would say he can step up there. So I ain't worried or tripping yet, but I definitely, if we start off bad in the first half of Thursday, which luckily I won't be able to watch. I'll be able to watch this after the fact because I'll be doing the Royals game with Eric. But if we start off bad on Thursday, yeah, that's when you're going to be starting to worry. But if they can put this to a close, still get more days off, don't have to worry about Game 7 in Philadelphia and all the pressure of being the first potential team to blow 3-0 lead, I think they'll be fine. But that's the team just because it's my team and they've started off great and then pissed me off the last 2 games. I just wanted to get that one out of the way.
You feel better now.
Yeah.
Right? You feel better now? You get that all off your chest, okay. As we've originally predicted, Boston did sweep.
Well, we didn't predict a sweep. I thought they would win. I think I said 6. Did you say a sweep?
I don't remember. I think it was 6, but we did predict them to win.
Yeah.
Right, but we weren't necessarily predicting a sweep.
No, not at all. I thought Brooklyn would be much better, where there's 2 words for why Brooklyn wasn't the best thing, and they're Bruce Brown. It's not because Bruce Brown's a bad player. He's actually a very good player that's a contributing scorer. The key word is he's a contributing scorer. He shouldn't be your most consistent scorer in an entire series other than Game 1 when Kyrie Irving went ballistic and then KD just lost them the game. He shouldn't be your most consistent guy. And when you have more contributing scorers, I should say, than more depth guys, being your most consistent guys, that's when you have a problem, and that's why they got swept. They didn't get the stars. But again, most of these games in this series, including the final one, was still a very close game, so they were still interesting games to watch in that perspective. But from the other perspective that I said in my own video on Sports Fanatic News previewing this game, they weren't interesting to watch as much as I thought because I thought it would be a tighter overall series in terms of 3 games to 1, then maybe they would battle back to 3 games to 2. I didn't think it would be a sweep by any stretch.
Okay.
So from that perspective, it wasn't as interesting as I thought, but at least the games stayed close. But like yesterday's game was like the secondary thing I had on TV, and I was paying more attention to other stuff because I just didn't care that much because Boston was up 3-0. And even though it was tight, I kind of thought, just like the other games that were tight, Boston had the better control of the game because other than the fact that yesterday KD finally did go off, so I will give him that.
Right.
And Kyrie dropped 20 and was all right. Like, they have been too reliant on contributing scorers rather than their top scorers, other than Kyrie in the first game was very good. And then
I think that was the reason why.
And then KD was very good in the final game, but it just – and also their defense is putrid. Their defense was absolutely horrendous. The Nets defense, I don't know, minus Game 1 that they actually, for most of it, played good and then just blew it and let the Celtics even come back to have a chance to have that great play by Marcus Smart. Their defense was not good either. So all those things compounded into a factor why you got swept.
Right. So Boston is the first team in the conference finals that's solidified. They're the 2nd seed, so they're looking pretty as far as that's concerned. We've already spoken about the Sixers and the Toronto Raptors. Are we looking for Miami to wrap up tonight against Atlanta?
Yeah, I think they will. I think Atlanta. I think we hit it on the head when we talked about Atlanta's a team that's a year or so away. They have the players.
They played really well, but they're just not there yet.
And I played well. They're just not there yet. Where Miami was the first seed for a reason. It's not even because Miami, I think, is one of the most freakishly athletically talented teams on the court. They're just one of the hardest, grueling, grit teams.
Working teams,
teams
Mm-hmm.
on the court that then have shooters like Duncan Robinson and others that just bang down the shots around Jimmy Butler. You got guys like Lowry, who's just a defensive wizard there. So all those things, I think, kind of help that team become what it is. And if he's able to play, you got Hero that can shoot, Strus who can shoot, and then Vincent. So I think they're a team that is going to wrap it up. And hats off to the Hawks, though, for being competitive, but they're just not. They're just not there yet. They're just not there yet. It was close in the one game they lost, which was 115 to 105, then 111 to 110. They were able to win. Yeah. But the other two were not really close. No. So you can tell the Hawks are just a little bit ways away at this point. But maybe even next year they could be a more.
And Miami's a good team. Like if the Hawks maybe would have gone up against maybe another team, they might have had a better chance. Maybe, yeah. But okay. So to wrap up the East here with Milwaukee leading them Chicago Bulls, and do you think this is done here tomorrow for Game 5? Do you think Milwaukee can take care of these guys?
Yeah, I think Milwaukee's going to put because I think we said when we previewed that I thought Chicago would be able to steal one. Yeah. Just because they were good enough to start the regular season and then kind of just fell off a cliff, where they'd probably be able to reignite a fire for at least a game. And that happened in that 114-110 second win they had. But otherwise, minus the first game that was really tight as well, 93 to 86. The last two, the Bulls have not played very well, and the Bucks were able to really take it to them and really pound them down low, use all their big body players that the Bulls don't have as much of to their advantage if you're Milwaukee, and then also just outshoot them even too, which the Bulls have to be able to do to stay with the Bucks. They have to be able to outshoot them because they're not going to pound them down low.
No. And they're not going to out-physical them either.
No, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's why I think that series is all but wrapped up tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Well, there's the East. So I guess we're basically putting Milwaukee in against Boston, and then I guess we're penciling in Miami versus the Sixers.
Yeah, if the Sixers win, that'll be against Miami, which will be the Jimmy Butler playing against his former playoff teams. That'll be an interesting matchup. Right. If that becomes the case, but we'll have to see if that does become the case.
Okay. All right. Sixers play on the 28th. So we have another couple days yet, and then Milwaukee plays not today but tomorrow. So, all right, the Western Conference, and the first thing I want to talk about is the Phoenix Suns tied at 2 apiece with New Orleans. I mean, we felt that Phoenix was the best all-around team going into this. And what are they doing tied with the
Scott Foster?
Yeah. Okay. Well, then.
I'm just literally gonna say it how it is. Scott Foster sucks at his job. He's Angel Hernandez of basketball. He's a terrible referee that shouldn't have his job anymore. It's the same thing with Angel. They're both nice people, from what you get from accounts of it, but that doesn't matter. What matters is if you have a job that controls the outcome of certain guys' professional careers potentially, you better be very well good at doing that job. And Angel, like Chris Paul hasn't won a playoff game. It can't be a coincidence that Chris Paul has not won a playoff game that's been reffed by Scott. Like, that's a pretty strange coincidence that has been reffed by Scott Foster. Like, there has to be some tension there that we don't know about that's led to that, because that's just a very odd, strange coincidence if that's just the case, where it's the same as Angel. Trevor Plouffe, who's one of my favorite people in baseball, was never a fantastic player, but now he does good stuff for John Boy and was always fun to follow on social media before he even got into the full media side, but just started doing his own stuff on Twitter. He came out and said, Angel's one of the nicest people you meet. The problem is he's not good at his job, which that's the same thing with that you get from
I know a lot about that.
Foster. So, like, I think this series would honestly be a one-game lead for Phoenix if the one game wasn't just astronomically refed poorly. But at the same time, even though it would have still only been a one-game lead for Phoenix, so you have to still give the claps up to the Pelicans for being able to get their wins because they still battle great in this series. And I think it probably was just taken for granted. Their pickup of C.J. McCollum, and two, the fact that Brandon Ingram might just be more of that dude than
what they expected.
Gave him credit for coming in the postseason, and all those things put together is kind of what has got the Pelicans to where they're at right now.
Okay, so they got Game 5 is tonight. Okay. And this is going to be back at Phoenix, right? And I mean, clearly this is going to go more than 5 games. So do you think it goes all 7 games? Do you think it goes, or what do you think?
Well, I think a big issue with this game has been also Booker's been battling that hamstring thing. So if you don't have a full-blown Devin Booker, it's kind of similar to how not having a full-blown Embiid if you're the Sixers affects your series. I think the Suns are still going to win the series in the end. I think this is just one of those series you're going to say, oh, great on the Pelicans because they didn't even have their full roster.
Right.
With Zion and everybody.
Zion not even playing
yet.
Yeah,
and they were able to fight and scratch and claw against this good of a team in the Suns. I think this is going to be one of those series, but in the end, the better team in the Suns will prevail, and I think that's going to be by winning the next home game and kind of setting themselves straight again, which I think this is the big game, because if the Suns lose this game, then I think the New Orleans does have a great chance to win, because then they're back in New Orleans.
Right.
And then they can go for the upset.
Exactly.
But if the Suns win this game, I think they're just going to close it in New Orleans, and you're not even going to have to worry about the 7th game.
Okay. The other series that's in the West that's tied, that's playing Game 5 tonight as well, is Memphis and Minnesota.
Yeah, this series has been by far one of the more interesting ones to watch, because we talked about how one team in Minnesota just has that great kind of spaced out scoring with the Patrick Beverleys of the world that can play good defense. Anthony Edwards, who's a developing superstar. You have D'Angelo Russell, who maybe similar to Ingram, we didn't put on the precipice enough to say how good he could continue.
But they have a good team.
Now. Yeah, they have a good full team. Where the Grizzlies, they have rightfully so the guy that won the comeback player of the year in Ja Morant. And then Dylan Brooks and other guys on that team, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson's a guy that's freakishly athletic. So like they have, and then Steven Adams, good rebounder, good defender as a center. I think this honestly, I would say I was even wrong in the last show. It was probably a more even series on paper than I gave it credit for, just because the Grizzlies are so much more ridiculous in the regular season, but the complete team, like we kind of talked about, of the Timberwolves probably should have kind of hit me with, especially the hockey mind of knowing complete teams can be the teams to kind of strike down the top teams the best. Like the Flyers, the one year we made the cup, for example, they weren't one of the best teams in the league. They just kind of went on one of those runs and struck down all of the top teams.
No,
So,
I agree.
like,
I agree.
Minnesota,
I think
is a complete team, but are they going to continue to be able to stick with the Ja Morants of the world and all that? Because I think eventually you do have a guy on the Memphis Grizzlies in Ja Morant that can fully just take over a series. Where Minnesota does not have that
guy
yet.
I got you.
They're waiting to have that in Anthony Edwards. So unless if Anthony Edwards becomes that now, then I think that's kind of the difference there, so to speak.
So we still going with Memphis on this one? Or
I would have to still stick with Ja's team, Memphis, on this one, because Ja Morant to me is already one of the best guys in the game right now, and that's because of just how good he's able to score. And you have a lot of guys in the game today that can score off formation. And what I mean is, like, you would never get taught to shoot a shot the way you're looking going up like that. And they're still
right. No, right. Yeah.
because they're just so coordinated and good at being able to make sure their elbows and stuff and shoulders are locked in with the basket. It doesn't matter if their feet are going to northern Kansas. They're still
well, yeah, because you have players like hockey players that can still get the shot on net, even though their body's in much different positions. Same thing with playmakers in football too. I mean, look at how many, flicks and underhand passes Mahomes does and stuff. You know what I mean, right? So okay, all right. So now we're going to get into the Golden State Warriors. I'm sorry. Against the Denver Nuggets, and Golden State is on this one 3-1, and they have a game 5 is tomorrow. Do you think Golden State can wrap it up?
I think honestly this is one of the easiest decisions I made, because I talked about how I think Golden State's a dark horse because they have Steph Curry, they still have Draymond, they still have Clay, and I did not think Jordan Poole was going to play to the ridiculous level he has been able to step up in some of these. In most of these games here in the postseason, pretty much all of them. If the young kid's able to play that well with the mix of their veterans, they're not just a dangerous team to wrap up this series, but they're definitely a dangerous team to potentially win the West, to get to the finals. So I think Denver battle, but I think also it just showed their limitations, especially without Murray. He's been a big miss from them the entire season, because having him with Jokic has the great two-way guy at the one guard position, and then a guy that's just very good at being an offensive juggernaut at the center position, because Jokic is not good on defense. So it kind of gives you both of those things, which adds a completely different dimension to the Denver Nuggets that they just didn't have this year, and I think that's what did them. And I think the Nuggets are still a great team, though. That'll be, if Murray's healthy next year, will be better than they were this year, even potentially, if they're able to kind of keep the same guys around. I don't know how the financials look off the top of my head.
Right. Okay. So, and then the final series of the West is the Dallas Mavericks versus the Utah Jazz, and Dallas is leading the series 3-2, and they have Game 6. Not today, not tomorrow, but on Thursday.
Yeah, that's the one that's on the same night as the Sixers game.
Yeah, this has been back and forth, and we felt as well too when we previewed this series that this was going to be one of the closer ones. Do you know what I mean? Because we felt that these two teams were kind of like with the Sixers game. Very evenly matched with Utah. You know what I mean? Dallas is with Utah.
Mm-hmm.
So with this one here, do you think that can Utah do the upset? Do you think they can?
No, because of the thing I said in the previous show. Luka Doncic's back now. He dropped 33 in the first game. It didn't look like he missed a beat at all. Yeah. You're screwed now if you're the Utah. That was what. I just wanted to hear that. Okay. That was what was giving you a chance to have a chance to win. The fact that Jalen Brunson turned into this basically criminal mastermind of a basketball player in the playoffs that can just score down low like he's a power forward doing hook shots over guys, and then make a step back jump shot too. And now you have. Well, he's been great in the regular season, don't get me wrong, but he's stepped his game into a different dimension, Brunson. For sure, and now you add Doncic back. Yeah, the Jazz, I would be shocked if the Jazz are able to win this series still.
Okay. All right. So there you have it. So now we have, for the conference finals now, we're projecting Phoenix for the West. We're projecting Phoenix and Dallas.
Yes.
Right? And then we're projecting Golden State.
Well, for the next round.
For the next round, for the conference semis. I'm sorry, for the conference semifinals, we're projecting Phoenix against Dallas, and then we're projecting Golden State versus Memphis in that. And there you have it, folks, man. I'll tell you what. The NBA playoffs have been heating up for sure. The only team that has made it to the next round is the Boston Celtics. So next week, we'll probably, by the time we do the show the next time, we'll probably be ready to preview the conference semifinals.
Yeah, I'm not sure how all those schedules work, if series end, if they start any on the following weekend
yeah,
if
if they
other
start on that
series end, and if they
weekend,
push
yeah.
stuff up, like how the push-up schedule works if stuff ends
Okay.
earlier. But yeah, we definitely would have some to preview. And but either way, if the series start or if it doesn't make a difference, we're going to be talking about them wherever they're at and giving you insight on that. Where now, I think since hockey's in the end round, we'll put baseball in the middle, because then for our hockey fans and basketball fans, if you're not also a baseball fan, you can just skip over this part. If you're also a baseball fan, then you can stay in.
We don't want you to skip over nothing, man.
You can stay in this middle
We don't want
part,
you to skip over
middle
nothing, man.
part.
Come on.
But when it comes to baseball, the biggest thing we have to shout out is one of the best players of all time we got the privilege to watch in our generation, which is Miguel Cabrera.
Yeah.
There's only 3 people on the planet that have hit 500 home runs, have a 3,000, that'd be ridiculous, 300 batting average, and have 3,000 hits. And Miggy is one of them. One of the others was Willie, and I can't remember who the third person was. But there's only 3. I remember there's only 3 guys on the planet that have that stat. And the fact that you're in the precipice of Willie Mays and then whoever else, I can't remember who the third person was, with Miggy, you're only in a conversation with 3 people. We got to watch that his entire career. He's somebody that, minus stuff that's got disproven, he's never really been linked to the whole PEDs stuff. And he's just been one of those guys that people trained their kids, or people looked at themselves to go, oh, this is how you hit it to all fields and don't overthink it and try to pull everything. This is how you let the ball come in deep and just take it the other way and take what the pitch is given to you. He was probably one of the guys he is one of the guys Nick Castellanos learned from. That's with the Phillies now, because he started his career with the Tigers and got to learn from Miguel Cabrera. I honestly don't think Nick Castellanos would be the hitter he is right now if it wasn't for getting that learning experience from a Hall of Fame baseball player, because I think everybody knows Miguel Cabrera is going to be in the Hall of Fame. So congratulations to Miggy to hit 3,000. On top of being one of the best players, he's one of the most fun personalities to follow in baseball as well, because you don't get enough of that always. And it's not because there's not enough fun personalities in baseball. It's kind of on the media for until the last 5 years, not covering the personalities of baseball enough compared to what they do in basketball, football, and then in hockey, it's been kind of the last 5 years too that they realized they should start doing that more. So, like, covering both sides is really helpful. And another thing I'll say before we jump from this, because I know Miggy's done it before, having guys, when it doesn't interrupt the game, be on the TV broadcast, when it's the national broadcast, be doing the interviews from the dugout while, like, watching the play, or even
that's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Or even while they're in the outfield, and then if there's a fly ball, they just shut up and they're like, wait a second, and then they'll come right back. Like, as long as they're cool doing that, like, that's really interactive. Where hockey players usually love doing it. They're like, oh, I love being mic'd up because I just tell the guys I might, but then I always end up being more of a prick intentionally because I'm mic'd up to give you interesting things.
Okay, so like you've heard the guys a lot of times, they mic up all the guys, like especially the goaltenders for the NHL All-Star game, you know what I mean? And they mic those guys up too, and so they usually try to interview them while they're sitting there trying to get shots against them and everything. It's like, oh, excuse me, while we're having an interview, and I'm facing, Connor McDavid's coming down and doing a breakaway on me right now, and he's trying to score, and by all means, ask me any question you want, you know what I mean? It's like, but no, I like that interaction. I like that kind of thing. I think that's going to help bring more of the fans back to baseball, because it's going to give, and see, that's kind of what I'm hoping too. Give the fans that more of an interactive view of things from the field, and give them more of an idea of what it's like to being out there as compared to the standard views and, the guys that just prattle on. I mean, seriously, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do is call a baseball game. Do you know what I mean? Because there's so much time in between anything that happens.
Yeah, you have to. It's a completely different. Like hockey, you don't have to worry about filler time because you're not going to have enough time to fill time anyway. Where with
normally.
Yeah, normally. Where with baseball, you're going to have all the time in the world that you have a time to write a jazz line probably in the middle of an inning.
Probably.
So there's all the time in the world.
Okay.
It's completely different. And I know both of our friend Jim Jackson, I know I've had that conversation with him too since he's done baseball and and hockey, differences and nuances of both.
Yes.
Baseball is definitely to me easy to do, especially if I just have the audio up on my YouTube. It's much easier because if I have to if I'm just doing it audio because I'm trying to also make sure I can respond to people when they text me and stuff. Baseball, if I'm having a busy day, I can still announce a baseball game.
Right.
Wow, because I just have to make sure I'm paying attention every time the pitch happens, which there's a 30-second delay half of the time between that. So
or more,
yeah. But now with the pitch clock, they're trying to stamp in that a little bit. The one thing I will say about baseball, I agree with Bryce Harper though, is being partially traditionalist. I'm fine with the DH and all things because I agree that seeing pitchers hit is not the sexiest thing. But the big thing, the humidor, I don't think is the best idea in every state. In Coors Field, it made sense because the ball travels to Jupiter and back. But with every stadium, I kind of agree with Bryce what he said on the Sunday Night Baseball game. It makes the game too much of the same. The whole point of different dimensions of baseball stadium and the different nuances is just that. You want them to be different. You don't want to humidor the baseballs too much that every stadium kind of hits this too similarly to each other, even though one's a massive box and the other's Citizens Bank Park and the other's PNC. You want to.
Yeah, I don't want to take that out of the game.
Yeah, you don't want to take that out of the game too much, which I agree with Bryce. I'm not sure how strong of a concern that should be because I don't know how all the science behind that works, and I'm sure he doesn't either. But because he doesn't have the time to know all of that crap. But I just don't want to take out all because the differences of each ballpark is one of the biggest things that makes baseball
exciting.
You can't.
I mean, and plus that is clearly one of the few sports where I really think that home field advantage does help. Because you tend to be able to hit your field a little better, a little easier than somebody else's field.
You know all the nooks and crannies of your field, too. And it's not just home field advantage with hitting. It's with fielding because you see plays that your team will make that because the other team's outfielders don't know the corners, they won't.
Or where the tracks are, you know what I mean? Yeah, see.
If you just running like a bull to get in a china shop, basically, to get to the ball. If you're at your home field, this is where this is. I have to slow down, otherwise I'm going to drill the wall.
Yeah.
If you're not in your home field, you might pull an Aaron Rowan and just smack the wall because you're just
suddenly there's the
you're
wall.
just running and catching and then not having any awareness because you haven't played in that field. So yeah, I completely agree with that. And also in hockey and basketball and football, they're more because of the way plays happen. You get fouled hard in basketball, you get hit hard in football and hockey.
Yeah.
Those are just going to naturally get you, you could get the fire under your belly more naturally. In baseball, the crowd kind of pushed that in you more because it's a more just stalled sport that you have to wait for things to happen.
Exactly.
That you don't always just get the natural, you don't see trash talking other than at the bases between guys, but you don't have that like you do in hockey, basketball, and football when it's just kind of naturally on the court, on the field, on the ice. So it's different that I think from three different perspectives, the home field advantage kind of works the best in there. But to wrap up baseball before we go to hockey, I feel like something we have to talk about is the start of the season by a certain team, which is the Seattle Mariners, and how good of a start that they were able to get off to this year. And they're 8-2 in their last 10. Have a 3-game win streak, have been very productive this year. And I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that you're having the pitching really come to fruition. Gilbert's pitched great. Chris Flexen's continuing to be a solid pitcher, not electric, but just solid for them as a middle of the rotation guy. So you have a mix of everybody, top rotation guys now, middle of the rotation guys. Unfortunately, Tim Giles is back on the IL, but you have a solid bullpen as well. J.P. Crawford's not only now one of the best locker room guys and a great fielder, he's starting to get the bat going even more. So if all this stuff continues, I'm trying to find where I put that piece of paper where I wrote down my division things to remember where I had Seattle slotted. I know I had them somewhere in that top 3.
Yes.
I had Texas first, but they could
definitely. I think you had them in the
was second.
Yes.
They definitely flip with Houston because Houston, to the degree of how Seattle has impressed me, has unimpressed me to the same degree that Seattle. Granted, it's still really early, so I'm not saying any of
we're not even in 20 games yet.
Season, but early on, to the degree that I've really liked what I saw, particularly from the young guys that are the biggest questions for Seattle, not because they're not talented, but because they're not proven yet, is if those guys can continue firing on all cylinders, they definitely have a chance to win that division.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest question. If that continues going forward, it's still a small sample size. But they definitely can pass Houston. And then Texas has been a big concern for me from how they got off to their start in their first 16. But again, as you said, it's still mightily early, so they have plenty of ways to go.
Yeah,
they
not even a 20 games
got
yet.
to pick it up because throughout history in baseball, if you're down a certain amount of games by Memorial Day, throughout history, there's only a certain percentage of teams that have made the play.
Yeah.
So
trust me, I know the special dates.
Have been one of them because the Mets know how to Met.
Yeah.
But and I hope Mets fans get pissed at that. But anyway, back to the thing we were at. That division, I think, is kind of going to be a battle to the end. The A's obviously aren't going to stay that close. They're going to drop off.
Yeah.
The Angels are probably going to continue to be a pretty good team that also has had some guys banged up early as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm definitely just had to shout out the Mariners because I've been impressed with how their young pitching's done. I've been
impressed
how the team has done. And then the AL Central has been literally one of the most, I don't want to insult the division because I like a lot of players and it's still fun to watch for me as a baseball fan, but bland divisions that you've seen to start a season. Everybody's literally 500 or like 3 games below 500.
Yeah, right. I was looking at that like, wait a minute. That's
like, it's literally like, it's kind of like, watching the individual games, you have fun watching them at times, but like the division as a whole, you're like, this is kind of a bland division. Like
exactly.
That's just the way you look at it, where the East is completely different. I've loved watching because the Red Sox, I think, are going to recover more. The Orioles are going to stay in last place. Tampa's been good early. The Yankees have been good early. Toronto is a team that I think is going to win that division, and they've been great early. So
I was going to say, Toronto's really been impressing me.
Most impressive teams in the league early, other than the New York Mets. I just insulted the New York Mets. Now I'll give the New York Mets a great compliment.
Well, I was just going to say, those who've been the teams that have impressed me the most have been the Mets and Toronto.
Yeah, the Mets have been probably the best team in the league early. Toronto, I think, is the second best. And then the East as a whole has been, or the National League, I should say, has been better than the American League early because you have the Rockies that have been impressive.
Wow.
You have that whole division 1 through 4 in the NL West that is at least 3 above 500. So
wow.
That compounded. The National League has been great early. The AL, because of the Central, is kind of one division that's just killing them. That's what that division picks it up. They have more of the top teams because you do have 4 good teams in the AL East. It's just the Red Sox aren't looking like that early, but they've had really good games. And Red Sox have been the Phillies of the AL, where they've had really good games and really big games that if they can kind of just put it together, you know what they can have. They just haven't been able to do that yet.
Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, I think with Major League Baseball being able to come back and being able to have a full season and being able to have players playing, I think that's the good thing now. I too have been impressed with some of the teams so far this year, and we're almost at the 20-game mark. So there's a lot of baseball left to be played, and a lot of teams can still, get better, of course. You know what I mean?
Agree. I just like doing I think our best time to do check-ins is like every 15 to 20.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Then you get to adjust
I
each time.
agree.
Like, oh, now this team's picked it back up. This team's done yada yada. And I think that where you
Right,
do it
because
each
you get
week, it's
players
not as cool because it's too
exactly,
soon.
and you get players, especially like pitchers, who go for a 20-game stretch where they're playing really well or they're not playing really well, and you get batters that go on 20-game stretches that do really well, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So I agree. I like to add a 20-game stretch.
Yeah,
This one,
like one of my favorite pitchers in baseball that I think I called him out in the positive on a video in the past on my Sports Fan News channel is Shane Mcglanahan, who's a lefty for the Rays, because he's just a simplistic. He's not like, now he can throw it like past you at like 95 or whatever, but he's not. That's not what he tries to do. He's not one of
right?
those guys that he learned how to pitch before he learned how to gun, which a lot of guys do it backwards now, I think, which that's why it takes him a little bit longer. And then I always appreciate the old school style guys that have crap analytics, but really just know how to hurl it. And has been some, when you look at betting odds, has been kind of a dark horse Cy Young guy, Dylan Cease of the White Sox, who when I got the privilege to cover that team for OT Heroics last year, I got to hone in on him a lot. And his stuff, I think, is better than his analytics highlight. He's just one of those guys that doesn't do the great because his spin rate's not the best. All those like rotational curves, but he just knows how to throw hitters off, where he'll throw the high inside, then throw a low outside breaker, and it will throw the guy off because he just knows how to mind game him. And I like kind of those old school pitchers that seem to really think the game like that. And Mcglanahan has dimensions of that too. He's just younger than C, so he's not fully there yet. I love watching those guys. I also obviously love watching guys like Strauss when he first came up that just blow it past people. But those guys learn how to pitch later. And Strasburg's even said that in interviews, how he kind of learned how to think the game more as he grew, where when he first came up, he kind of just gunned it and just got guys out with his stuff.
No, I agree. So, all right, here we go. Now we're going to jump into a little bit of the NHL because we're getting that much closer to the NHL playoffs. And I'll tell you what, man, this is, like I said earlier, one of my favorite times of the year because this is the start of the second season. Now, for those of you that aren't really fully aware, the second season is the NHL playoffs. And there is nothing on this planet in sports that even remotely comes close to the NHL playoffs. Yeah. And I am so looking forward to how this is going to all shake down this year because we've all known for a long time who's going to make it in the East.
Yeah, that's been established for a while. The West is there's a collapse, I would say. I think Dallas and Nashville are going to get it over Vegas. Vegas is still in the 20-something percentile.
Okay, so
I think the
Dallas and Vegas play tonight. Okay?
Yeah.
And if Dallas wins, Vegas is that. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Vegas is it. If Florida wins in any way, shape, or fashion over Boston tonight, okay, and the St. Louis Blues defeat the Colorado Avalanche in any way, shape, or fashion, then the Florida Panthers are going to be your President's Trophy winners.
Yeah, which is definitely leaning towards that, looking to be the case where you have Colorado at 116. And then you might not even want that if you're the superstitious type anyway. So,
well, John and I were talking about this on Off the Wall Hockey the other night. And the last time this happened was the Chicago Blackhawks in 2013. They won the President's Trophy, and then they also won the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
We think this year is ripe for another one of those types of situations because of the teams that are going to win the President's Trophy are far and away better than, I mean, let's face it, if Florida wins the President's Trophy, I still don't take them out of the cup race.
No, well, I wouldn't either. I was just making I was just saying normally
that's how it is.
Yeah.
If you win the President's Trophy, you don't usually win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and that's just something that, banks off of stats, but it's also a thing that is just weird because it's a weird thing that's just kind of played throughout history where a lot of the teams that obviously in order to win the President's Trophy, you have to be one of the best in the regular season, if not the best. But just because you got the most points doesn't mean to everybody you're going to necessarily be the best. Exactly. That depends from personal opinion. But I would say Florida has a great chance to win. I would say Colorado has a great chance to win. Carolina, I think, is a team that, though, is good without it because they're kind of a team that does good with that underdog, like not being the top dog mentality. So I think they're actually a team that's just better. They fell off a little bit because I think they play their best at that type of mentality.
Coming from the, the side of being the quote unquote underdog, even though Carolina has been one of the mainstays on the top 5 lists for me and John, at least this season so far. You know what I mean? Carolina, Colorado, Florida have just stayed on the top lists pretty much all season. You know what I mean? So,
well, the East, this has just been a crazy year. We also didn't really talk about this but just a crazy year in general for production purposes in the NHL. Like the entire East playoffs had people 100 points and up. That doesn't happen often.
The fact that we have a record number of teams with 50 wins.
And that's a good point. And you also have Boston at 49, so they could get to 50.
And and then hold on, dude.
Tampa's at 49.
Right, it gets even better. Not only are we having a record number of teams get to 50 wins, but we've got how many guys that are at 50 goals this year?
And over 100 points, you have multiple 100-point guys.
And multiple guys that are over 100 points. Now, get this. There are 37 players that have 30 goals or more.
Oh, yeah. Well, they make it easy for people like us because they give you a lot to talk about. You don't have to go out there looking for a talent-deprived, looking for things to talk about, where this has been the most talent you've seen in hockey for a while. And you see even, like, when I watch Sportsnet stuff, too, you see even them bring it up on there about how the talent even has a trickle-down effect to the juniors, to the ECHL, to the AHL, where you see it just growing of talent, where there's a lot of guys when you watch them in the E covering the ECHL, you're like, how the heck is this guy not in the AHL? Because they're just like nutmeg somebody in the ECHL, and it's because of just how deep that team's talent is with C+, C level, B- level prospects they're trying to develop. That they can't move them up that quickly, that it's a gradual pace, that the talent is getting vaster all around, which is also why we'll talk more about the draft in the future. But I think when it comes to prospects, people can't focus, and I understand why you do, but you can't focus as much on draft year, and you kind of have to focus on age and how the prospect's been affected over the course of his career. To rank a guy like Frost, for example, was knocked out an entire season, then had like a food problem. When we interviewed him at the Phantoms, he was basically eating out of a straw for a week when he was still playing and just having milkshakes. So like, obviously that's going to affect your play as well. So like, there's always different, just normal human factors to guys developing as well.
Hey, man, I like milkshakes.
No, I know, but like, he was just able to he was just able to make those smoothie milkshake drinks and have those because his stomach, he was trying to get something. So like, there's all this normal human stuff that people go through, and and that's why obviously you have those guys win the Masterson, and that's also why obviously Kevin Hayes was the nomination for the Masterson for the Flyers, who I would assume has a very good chance at that because he battled through his brother's death. He battled through other multiple things this year and battled through injuries himself. So I think, plus Hayes never comes off, like, even though, yes, his contract's high, that's not his fault that his contract's higher than what fans love. That's Chuck Fletcher's fault. So don't knock him for that. So the thing with Hayes is he always has that. Around Kevin Hayes, you're never going to feel crappy. Let's put it that way. Like, no matter how the team's doing, if you see Kevin Hayes, like, he's just smiling. He's one of those guys that if we don't trade him, might even make sense until eventually, I think, inevitably Fairby's the captain anyway. He might even make sense to give that to from a different perspective because Cooch is a silence leader. Hayes is definitely more of the Voracek, but Voracek in a sense of being the happy-go-lucky vocal leader and not the I'm going to get in your face and curse you out because you suck type of leader like Jake would do sometimes. Which there's no problem with that, but I'm just saying it's completely different.
Well, here's the thing. I'm excited about how these playoffs are going to shake down. I'm excited about how the West still hasn't been decided yet, and it's going to come down to the wire. And it is going to basically come down to this game tonight. If Dallas beats Vegas, that's over for Vegas. And then we don't have to worry about it. Then we'll know that the West will be set, okay? And that's how things are going to go. You know what I'm saying? If that's the case, we're going to see some very interesting playoff series, and I think by the time we have the next show, we'll probably be able to do a little playoff breakdown for the first round of playoffs.
Yeah, we probably will be able to do it, and then I know our one friend E-Money Evan wants to do playoff previews too, so we'll see if it works for the big show. If not, I'll have one for mine separately if that works with the scheduling. But yeah, he definitely wants to do stuff like that when it's more set in stone. But I think when it comes to, before we get to our dark horse teams, because I know you like predicting those as well, and 2 years ago you were spot on with the Dallas Stars. So let's go.
And actually, last year I wasn't that far off either with Colorado.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forget who I said last year. But when it comes to overall teams that have impressed me in terms of building up correctly, I think those teams deserve to be shouted out as well. Like Francis got Seattle a bunch of picks. They're moving at the normal rate of most expansion teams. The hockey guy did a great video on this. People that want to check it out. That's months ago now, but it's on the normal rate of expansion progress and not Vegas blowing it out of the water and screwing everybody over. That's an expansion team in the future. But it's good for them that they did that because it was fun to watch and they're a fun team to watch. But I'm just saying that's an unrealistic expectation. Right. Where Seattle drafted the veterans. And they kind of now have the young guys. Matty Beniers has come in and played great. I think they're going to build in the right direction. Riker Evans is a very underrated defense prospect that they got as well that can play good on both ends. And the big thing with Riker Evans is he might only be 5'11", but you're not gonna think he's 5'11" because he'll come up to the blue line and hit somebody into the.
Giroux's 5'11", and he plays like he's 6'1".
Oh yeah. Yeah, like he was a guy over 60 penalty minutes because he'll step up for his team in the dump.
There you go. That's the kind of guy we'd like to see.
Yeah, Evans is a guy that'll be good for Seattle. I also think Anaheim, who obviously had their moment of looking like they might be there this year and then fell off, they're a team. Also, congratulations.
Well, I think the thing with Anaheim though, Joe, is I think that Gibson needs to go.
There's a certain point, where you do have to make it because Lucas Dostal's a very good goalie with the goals that's played good this year and is a top prospect for them.
Right.
So there's a certain time, you do have to make that decision. Getzlaf's now retired. Hats off to the
That's the other one that's going to be a major one for them too. Can they convince him to come back and play again? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to be done. So that's another big hole.
No, but I also think.
But I like how they're going though. I like the direction they're going too.
I do think Getzlaf kind of saw it as his time to pass the torch, though. Like he sees a guy, albeit a completely different type of personality than him, but a guy that's going to lead this team into the future. And Zegras, that he's like, okay, I'm just going to go now because I've mentored this kid since already, and it's time for him to just take the lead and be the crazy goofball he is. That's also great on the ice, and run with that. Like,
I mean, I've enjoyed watching him play this year. I've enjoyed watching
I've enjoyed watching everything Trevor's done away from that one thing.
Yeah.
The chauffeur for I think it was Getzy and somebody else on his team.
It was. Yeah, it was.
That's hilarious. Like he's a guy that in a good way is a character that's going to be fun to watch.
Right.
For years to come from the media stuff he does combined with the play.
I agree with that 100%. But here's the thing though. We like how those teams are trending. Look for Detroit to be better, I think, as well as
Detroit
Buffalo.
might be a playoff team next year if everything
I think
goes.
Buffalo. I think Buffalo is also going to be a better team next year as well. Okay, because I kind of like the way they're going. They've got some really nice prospects that are going to be potentially playing for the team next year. Montreal might be an improved team because I really like what Marty St. Louis has done there. Even though they haven't won a lot, I like how they're setting things up for him.
Yeah, I think they're an improved team. I think Montreal's still going to be in the bottom.
I agree.
Barrel, but there'll be a team that looks a lot better on the ice, like they have with St. Louis, because they're in a longer rebuild. Where Detroit's towards the end of the rebuild, Buffalo's
Agreed.
towards the tail end.
Yeah.
A team that's interesting because they can kind of go both ways. Because I like some of their prospects, and others they need to progress a little bit more. Is Columbus. Columbus is an interesting one because they could go one. They're kind of
see. I kind of look at New Jersey as the same way.
They could kind of go both. Yeah, Jersey can kind of go both ways because they had guys that 2 years ago did great, had different other guys that did great, like Jesper Bratt this year. If all of those guys kind of come together in one, then yeah, they are going to have a fantastic season. But it's an if that happens. But the big thing with Buffalo is I think they have their goaltending set because Portillo, the Michigan kid, that we got to cover for the regionals. He's very good and one of the top goal processors. He got Devin Levi from that one trade with Florida, who's one of the top goal and won the Richter Award. So he's obviously one of the top goaltenders. And then they have Ukko-Pekka Laitinen, who just took longer to develop, but actually looked good in a handful of games. I think it was 9 this year. So he's looked good. I think that they can kind of rely on that. And I did a video recently on Craig Anderson, and even Buffalo fans commented like I would be perfectly comfortable with having one of the young guys play and Craig be the backup next year, just because the teams play good around him. They haven't played that great around Dell, but that's a different story. And then you have him, Tokarski, that has been a good at least 2 to 3 level goaltender at the NHL level, and then you have Pekka kind of take the bull by the horns and see if he can take the starting job next year and kind of do it that way. If I'm Buffalo and Craig Anderson doesn't want to retire, that's a big thing because he's 40. You should keep both of those guys around and kind of just keep the goalie room together because I think that's the best foot forward for them. And then they also have Hauser in the minors, who's a very good AHL veteran that makes sense to keep around down there. So when you have Levi come eventually, and you have now, if Pekka doesn't make the team out of the gate, you have him. You have one of those minor league not great, but very good minor league goaltenders kind of there to mentor a guy like that as well.
I could not disagree with you at all on that one. I think that was a great point, Joe, for sure. All these are all great points, and I'll tell you what, for version 18, volume 18, we've covered a lot. We covered a lot with the basketball playoffs and how that's shaken down. Checked in with the baseball and did a little bit on the NHL side, man. Why don't you tell the folks where we can get you, where we can find you, and how we can see any more of your great stuff, Joe?
Yeah, you can follow me at Bork6789 is Instagram. That one I'm getting used to saying out loud since people like Instagram more nowadays than they did when I first got it, so I kind of share that one more now. Facebook's just my name, JJBork26 is the Twitter. That's probably the easiest way to get me through DMs. And then if I like you enough, like Evan, you might get my phone number one day to easier communicate with me instead of doing it through social media. But you can find me there. It's always a joy talking to you guys. We got to cover the NBA big time. We got to cover baseball, and we got to cover hockey in this one. So it was definitely a joy to be able to cover it all with you guys. And then soon we'll also have, for next week, some NFL draft reaction stuff where you'll get to react to some Steelers picks and I'll get to react to some Eagles picks, and we'll see what. Oh,
boy, man. By the way, I did a preview show for the Steelers draft picks. You got to go check that out on the SteelFlyers channel for sure. And then be looking for this show to be coming out here real soon too. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for checking us out. I'm SteelFlyers. You can find me on SteelFlyers.com, or you can find me on Twitter at SteelFlyers52. Thanks, Joe, for all the hard work you do, man. Really appreciate everything that you do for the JB and Steel show. Wouldn't be the same without you, my man. Wouldn't be the same without all you folks watching and all your support. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll catch you all on the next episode of the JB and Steel show.